So we got New York City's sanctuary city status. It is largely keeping the New York Police Department from breaking up migrant youth gang in the shelter system. You got a bunch of mini Tren de Araguas running around the shelter system, and cops can't do anything about it. Let's get into it. Here we go. So this morning on live stream, I covered Tren de Aragua comes for U.S. kids. Gang member accused of trying to recruit middle school students in Texas, in Houston, Texas, going after the kids because, you know, the kids, they know that if they get popped, they're not going to do much time. And if they're from, say, I don't know, Venezuela, you know what? You know what's going to happen to them? Not much. And in New York City, Houston, little different drill than New York City. New York City, I mean, the world's your oyster. If you're an illegal and you're underage, ooh, you write your own ticket, right? And that's literally what you've got going on. The Big Apple's self-imposed sanctuary city status is handcuffing the New York Police Department from clamping down on a violent crew of young Tren de Aragua members. You got many Tren de Aragua members. It's terrorizing Manhattan, sources tell the Post. Remember how we initially saw just a whole bunch of people riding around on the scooters? Then they said, oh, yeah, gangs are coming in. They're dressed like Uber drivers on scooters. Yeah, well, because they're doing that too, right? But now you've got this recruitment campaign going on, and it all hinges on the young kids. The one on here, Tren de Aragua in Houston, they were going to be putting together a huge shoplifting crew. That's what he was recruiting for, shoplifting, because that's a thing. So you got a bunch of young kids coming in. They're going to clear out your store. You know, they get busted. They're under 18. Not much is going to happen. They're certainly not going to get deported. Cops already grappling with the Empire State's lenient criminal justice laws have to contend with the immigrant-friendly designation that largely bars police from city-funded migrant shelters that have become a hotbed for gang activity, the sources said. It's a problem, one law enforcement source said. We're essentially allowing a criminal enterprise now involving minors to percolate in the shelter system without the police being able to do what they would normally do, due diligence, when minors are involved in crime. You know what? These big liberal cities, they're just encouraging this kind of thing because we've gone down that justice reform deal, defund the police, all of that crap that clearly didn't work. Seattle police are now offering a $50,000 signing bonus, one of the highest in the country, because they can't recruit any cops because nobody wants to be a cop in Seattle because you just dumped all over policing as a profession. You defunded police. You had the whole chop jazz thing. What a train wreck. No wonder nobody wants to be a cop. So as you're trying to recruit more police officers, it's just not happening. It's a no-go. Chatting with somebody this morning on our premiere, and they're a former police officer, and they said, you know what? Policing is never going to get back to where it once was. And it's because we've taken this attitude of demonizing policing and encouraging something as stupid as defund the police to take place. It's just pay to pray. Look at this. I mean, the stuff you have, migrant youth gangs terrorizing Times Square from city-funded shelters. That is literally what you've got going on. They're terrorizing Times Square. Look at this kid. I mean, say this kid is small for his size. Okay, is he 10? Is he 12? He looks like he could be 10 or 11. He's probably got a Glock in those shorts, right? I mean, these kids. So the stalemate has become increasingly frustrating for the New York Police Department, particularly as a baby-faced pack of violent Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua calling itself Diablos de la 42. 42 should be 42, I think. Is that right? I think so. Diablos de la 42. Devils of the 42nd Street. It's been targeting locals and tourists in armed heists around Times Square, according to sources. Armed heists. That's nice. Got a little armed action going on. I've talked about this a bunch. My favorite Chevron near my home, where I go to fairly often, it had an armed robbery three weekends ago, I think it is now. And they were kids under 18. They were from a gang down south in Kent and Auburn, gang down south, and not much is going to happen to them. Bellevue police caught them. It's big news in Bellevue. Now, we've got a lot of crime happening because this is a soft on-crime state. And King County is like number one for so many things. You've got some of the highest homelessness in the United States behind New York City and who else do we have? LA, I think it was. I mean, we've got some of the craziest numbers of cars being stolen here in King County, relative to the entire United States. But in these big liberal cities where you've got this whole soft on crime approach, and then you toss in a little bit of sanctuary city status, why wouldn't these criminals come here? And why wouldn't they set up shop in these communities? I mean, it's exactly what's going on. Once content to just snatch purses and jewelry, officials say that members of the marauding migrant youth gang, some as young as 11, are now armed and dangerous. That is not shocking at all. I mean, they're members of a gang. Maybe it's a junior gang, okay? But of course, they're going to see, the older guys packing heat. They're going to get a gun. Same thing. I mean, why wouldn't this happen would be the only question. Authorities maintain that the youngsters are recruited by migrant gang members in city shelters, particularly the Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown. That used to be a really nice hotel, Roosevelt Hotel in Midtown, and set out to do the dirty work because when they get popped, nothing's going to happen to them. So now you've got recruitment in migrant shelters, and you've got recruitment in our middle schools, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And there's also, reading this morning, there are Tren de Aragua teenagers enrolled in middle school and certainly in high school. So you've got them in the schools as well. So all this talk that has gone over, the last few years of, hey, if you let millions and millions of illegals, especially ones coming from Venezuela, into the country, a certain percentage of those might be, not only bad kids, but kids that, maybe don't have a dad. And that's what most of these recruiters target, is kids that need to be associated with some type of, father figure. And gang activity, we all know how that goes. We're watching it unravel in front of us, So all this notion about, just trying to help out our fellow neighbors from Venezuela. Yeah, well, certain politicians have been talking about what happens when you do that as well, mainly a presidential candidate. And he's right. He's absolutely right. This kind of thing is happening because we're allowing it to happen. And that whole bipartisan bill that got put out last year, it was this year, that thing was terrible. That's why Trump said, you know what, guys, I don't think that's a good idea. That was ridiculous. They put together a ridiculous piece of legislature that should have gone nowhere, and it didn't because it was terrible. So when you hear that argument of, well, the Republicans, they're not concerned about the border. They are, and they can actually read a document and realize, oh, this is just basically going to allow elevation of numbers into the country of illegals. That's what that legislation did. And so people who can read, people who can actually make a discerning decision decided to say, you know what, I don't think we're going to go for that one. And they didn't. And then Democrats say, well, this is all based on the Republicans because we would have had that legislature back there. Never mind the 94 executive orders that the Biden administration has done since they've taken office, starting off with not building the wall. Yeah. New York Police Department youth coordination officers are also unable to get into the shelters to keep tabs on migrant kids to make sure they're getting services and staying out of trouble, sources said. You get the feeling that this is all on purpose, that this is all planned. I mean, I do, because why else would you do this? Why are you, safe harboring criminals? Why are you doing that? Yeah. In addition, sanctuary cities also refuse to cooperate with federal authorities, with local cops barred from alerting ICE when a migrant is accused of a crime, meaning the feds are unable to immediately take them into custody and start deportation proceedings. I think we should make sanctuary cities illegal. I think we should make that status illegal. Just period. Illegal. No can do. You got to let ICE uphold the law. Local police, ICE, let them work together, uphold the law. I think you make this whole sanctuary city thing just, no go, guys. That didn't work out. It was a failed policy from the get-go. We all saw that coming, just like defund the police. We talk about defunding the police and, well, if we could just get the money into the social workers' hands, everything would just be hunky-dory. Well, some of the social workers here in King County, specifically out of Renton, Washington, King County gave them millions of dollars. And while this anti-violence component of social work in the Boys and Girls Club was taking millions of dollars, the woman running that program was also laundering money for a fentanyl ring. Yeah. So, in that instance, when people ask me, well, how are the social workers doing? In that case, and that was a huge case, and I podcasted that here, the end results are not good. They're not good. Not to say that all social workers are bad. You need some component of that to work within the community. But when you have examples of that going on in the community, it doesn't really lend itself to the idea of, you know what? We should take all the money from the cops and give it to the social workers because that's going to work out. So in a city that prides itself on sanctuary, we must confront the uncomfortable truth. When policies prioritize protection over accountability, we risk fostering a culture where crime goes unchecked, an ICE source said Monday. 100% true. If you don't have accountability, what's going to happen? Hey, nobody's going to stop us from doing this. Let's go recruit Junior. And when he gets popped, nothing's going to happen. He's not going to get deported. And so many of these, Tren de Aragua is Venezuela based, right? Or was. Now it's US based. And so the United States doesn't have diplomatic relations with Venezuela. Yeah, we're not buddies. We don't really, share a lot of intel. It's just, hey, could you keep your people back down there? No, sending them your way. Emptying out the prisons. We're emptying out the insane asylums. We're emptying everything out. Estados Unidos, El Norte. Yeah, go north, people, to the United States. City shelters should be havens of hope and support, not sanctuaries for those who commit crimes, the source said. True sanctuary should mean safety for all, not a free pass for the few. And that's so true, because what we're overlooking here is there's so many people that have left Venezuela with kids, with young kids, husbands and wives, families, and they are looking to try and get a better life in the United States, and maybe they deserve it. And they're going to go down that road of getting, their asylum in the United States and getting their citizenship down the road. And I don't have a problem with that. But when you bring in millions and millions of people unchecked, essentially, you don't have the ability to vet. You don't have the ability to vet people. So I'm not saying that everybody who's come across the southern border is bad, but I'm saying just based on math alone, based on the data and the science, isn't that what we were told when we were lied to about the pandemic? Based on the data and the science, we're going to do this. And you looked at the data and the science and you're like, you got that out of that? What in the hell were you talking about? Nobody knows what you're talking about. It was just drivel from, man, here in Washington State, it was drivel from Oh, our governor. Terrible. Just terrible. Officials at City Hall did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Monday. They're busy. Tren de Aragua members entered the United States among the millions of asylum seekers who have crossed the border since 2022, with many of them making their way to New York City. New York City, Chicago, Denver, Utah, Idaho. We know we've got Portland. Tren de Aragua is everywhere now. Is everywhere. They're East Coast, West Coast. They don't have big coverage because they don't have big numbers yet. But, you know, give them a few years. When you're recruiting in middle school, then you're recruiting in the shelters, which have been they've been a-flowing with folks, right? So, I mean, it's not like recruiting police officers. One of my segments today is how let's go Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago. He's basically defunding the police department in Chicago. Said he wouldn't do it, but he's a progressive. So, of course, he's going to go down that road. Yeah, this is going to be good. Money we save. You know, we can't put these police officers through training right now. So, meanwhile, he's got 18,000 shootings happening per night. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it's always horrific when I bring up those numbers, right? Once in a city care, we're talking about Tren de Aragua, they begin recruiting new members, branching out into trafficking drugs, guns, and women. That's special. That's nice. Yeah. Who are forced into prostitution to pay off massive smuggling debts, sources have said. Where is the care for our fellow human being, particularly the ladies out there? Where's all the care for that in these big sanctuary cities where they're just basically rubber stamping prostitution to happen under the guise of asylum seekers? Here's, let's watch this. This is another crazy story here. This is a mother of 5 who has her children run drugs. She's a member of Tren de Aragua, and she runs a sex ring. Human trafficking, sex trafficking, mainly females and mainly Venezuelan females. So here's, her name is La Barbie, and you can find her on TikTok. Yeah. They're not hiding even. Okay, do you remember that the hotel in El Paso, main floor, and I think the 3rd floor they had right to operate? Well, she was operating out of there, sex trafficking. Yeah. Barbie Underground Official. 1F and official. We covered that one. Hard partying behavior. Five kids. Land of the free. Man, that storm. Land of the free, home of the brave, right? I mean, the whole thing is just so messed up. The recruiters have also focused on bringing children into the gang's ranks, first as part of the perch-snatching rascals, but more recently as armed thieves with no regard for their victims, according to the sources. But because of their ages, the pint-faced thugs generally get a slap on the wrist when they're caught, and cops are unable to conduct ongoing surveillance once they're back in the shelters because it's a sanctuary city and the shelters are deemed off limits, even for the criminals. So anytime you put this sanctuary city label on something, it goes sideways. It goes sideways. That's why they're recruiting from middle school, another federal immigration source said. Easy to move merchandise and guns. Police aren't going to stop an 8-year-old kid. And that's elementary though. And it goes back to the district attorney's office in sanctuary cities. Yeah. I mean, even if these kids get popped, nothing is going to happen. In recent years, New York has made it harder to prosecute minors for serious crimes. In 2018, state lawmakers implemented the Raise the Age statute. This is all part of justice reform and basically not holding people accountable for their crimes. So we got the Raise the Age statute, which increased the age of criminal responsibility to 18. Prior to the law, teens as young as 16 could be automatically charged as an adult. And that's what we need to go back to. Because then kids will think twice about, hey, join a gang. And they're going to ask me to do something crazy. They're going to ask me to kill somebody. They're going to ask me to do whatever. I do that. I'm under 18. I know I could still get popped at 16. There's a little deterrent. Otherwise, you've got no deterrent. Following year, the legislature in Albany began passing a series of criminal justice reforms that barred judges from setting bail for suspects in most crimes, save for a handful of violent felonies, where you really take somebody to task, shoot somebody, beat them up. Something just brutal. That's what it takes now for these kids to get arrested. Despite some tweaks in recent years, many suspects remain out of jail while they await trial. You know what? You got to clean all this up, but you're not going to, because this is New York City and they've got just this hard on for justice reform and just letting, their own citizens get ravaged by who knows what for no real reason. There's no real reason this should be going on. I mean, give me one. Hey, why should we allow youngsters under the age of 18 to just run amok in Times Square under the auspices of sanctuary city status? Where's the upside to society there? There is none. It's just a harebrained idea. Folks need to pull their head out of their ass, don't they? They really do. The whole city is starting to feel like an insane asylum. Bill, a 29-year-old New Yorker who works near the Roosevelt Hotel, said Monday, I walk by this hotel 5 days a week, and I can tell you there are no rules. Of course they're not. That is a sanctuary city hotel. It's like a little fortress, one of 100 gang fortresses in the city. Who thinks this makes sense? Bunch of politicians who are soft on crime, who believe that if you bring enough people into the country, eventually they will vote for your political party. Yeah. Do you maybe think they might commit some crimes in the meantime? Do you think the lady who runs her 5 children as drug mules, do you think she might be involved in, some pretty serious crimes, aside from the fact she's wanted for sex trafficking? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Barbara, a Brooklyn mom who works in the Midtown neighborhood, said that she's been encouraging her sons to befriend migrant children in school, unaware some were being pulled into gangs. Yeah, Jimmy, how come your buddy's got one of those crown tattoos on his neck? What's up with that? I mean, he's like 11 or 12, right? He's just in some kind of gang. What? I didn't know. You don't watch, news stories. You don't watch enough news for reasonable people, apparently, right? Because they're recruiting underneath your noses. I was worried about the shots, measles, mumps, rubella, and the rest that they probably didn't get, the 37-year-old mother said. And now I have to worry about guns and knives and your children being involved with sex trafficking. Yes, you do. You do. Because you've allowed this into your community. And even if you didn't personally allow it, the constituents in the area voted politicians in that did. So, you got to make those decisions. And meanwhile, a retired 72-year-old bartender and Hell's Kitchen resident, who only identified himself as Alexander D., said he was also concerned about other migrants stuck living next to the gang. Think about that, he said. Your kids are getting recruited by the same piece of you-know-what gangs you just crawled through a jungle and climbed onto a moving train to get away from. They get here, and now their kids are getting recruited right out of the room next door. Poor bastards. Yeah, and yet no fix seems to be in sight. Why would there be one? You know what? There isn't going to be one. It's just going to be, there's going to be some, meltdown at the southern border, and I'll keep going through that. But the damage has already been done. The damage has already been done from the standpoint of you already let millions of people into the country, and they're here, and they're in our schools, and now they're recruiting our school-age children. And, they're not being held accountable when those kids are committing crimes. It's the way of the world. And that's why this doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why I've been hammering on the immigration thing, because I think there's so many other stories coming out of that I think will be, oh, yeah, I didn't think about that one. And it'll be how some new criminal element has popped up. And we'll all be like, oh, yeah, I didn't see that one coming. We'll talk about it. Thanks again for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next podcast. Bye for now.